Well, Nikki Haley did far better than expected against Donald Trump in the New Hampshire primaries. And yet there's heated debate in the Republican Party about whether Nikki Haley should withdraw from the race for the nomination altogether to allow the party to unite around Donald Trump. Haley held a press conference where she refused to back down. She went hard against the former president, even implying that he had mental competency issues just like Joe Biden.
With Donald Trump, you have one bout of chaos after another. This court case, that controversy, this tweet, that senior moment. You can't fix Joe Biden's chaos with Republican chaos. No, I've long called for mental competency tests for politicians over the age of 75. Trump claims he'd do better than me in one of those tests. Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. But if he thinks that, then he should have no problem standing on a debate stage with me.
Nikki Haley clearly challenging Trump to a debate there. Well, the former president responded with his own scathing attack on her performance so far.
I'm up and I'm watching, and I said, she's taking a victory lap. And we beat her so badly but Ron beat her also. You know, Ron came in second and he left. She came in third and she's still hanging around. The other thing, she only got 25% of the Republican votes. I don't know if you saw that.
One of Donald Trump's former press secretaries, Kayleigh McEnany, told Fox News that Nikki Haley could very well be staying in the race to try her hand at securing the VP nomination.
I know she says she's not running for second. I think this is a play for the vice presidential nomination. We must unite the Republican Party. I think she's playing for that.
All right, so you believe she's going to force the issue, drag this out, get some clout with some delegates going into the convention and leverage her way onto the ticket?
I think that is a real possibility.
Well, joining me now, another former spokesman for Trump, Sean Spicer. Great to see you again, Sean.
Always good to see you, Sherry.
Look, this is a very solid win for Donald Trump, but Nikki Haley still did better than many expected, even the polls. What did you make of her comments that, at this stage at least, she's refusing to withdraw?
Well, look, first of all, she has a right. I mean, you can stay in as long as you want. But the reality is, you notice she came out real quick. The vote that came in early was where she did better. The big suburbs of Boston, the Manchester, Concord, New Hampshire, those bedroom suburban communities just north of Boston. She knew she would do well where independents were going to play a big role. She made a couple of mistakes. Number one, Nevada is actually the next stop. She's just not on the ballot there, which kind of is perplexing. The second thing is South Carolina is 31 days away. And you look at the polls in South Carolina, she's down 30 points in the state that she was elected governor twice. And almost every major endorsement from the federal level, from the senators to the current governor to the state representatives are all with Trump. The problem is that I don't see a viable path forward for her. I get what she did. Even if she continues to go past South Carolina, Super Tuesday's 10 states, 870 delegates at stake, and you have to be able to run more than one state. So she's been able to park herself, if you will, in one state, Iowa, then New Hampshire, and she wants to go home to South Carolina. But you can't run into, these are supposed to allow the process to have a little time to percolate. She doesn't have the capability to go into to Super Tuesday the way that Donald Trump does.
If there is no viable path for her to defeat Trump, as you say, through these primaries, is Nikki Haley then relying on an external factor like the Democrats throwing Trump in jail, something like that, to see her win the nomination? Is that what's going on here?
I think you're putting your finger on something. The interesting thing is, we like to say, is it the black swan event, something kind of akin to what you're talking about. The problem is that there's none of his court cases are actually at a point where any of that could possibly happen. So I get it, but it's like you're running just on the hope that maybe something happens. And if it did, I would actually have a better chance of seeing somebody else get back in the race. You notice they always use these words, I suspended my campaign. That means that they're technically still filed. They're on the ballots. They could jump back in theory. But I think you're onto something. That's the only thing that's keeping her in this race, is this idea that maybe something happens. And that's no way to run a campaign.
The other suggestion, and we just heard it from Kayleigh McEnany, is that perhaps Nikki Haley's trying to manipulate a situation where she could be asked to be Trump's running mate, his VP. What do you think of that notion?
Nothing is ever out of the question. I think Trump put it to rest the other day. She has said it. Bush ended up being Reagan's vice presidential nominee in the 80s. It's possible. I just don't see it. There's too much bad blood now between the two of them. She didn't want to stay on as his UN ambassador. I just don't get the vibe that she's ever really wanted to be Donald Trump's number two.
Vivek Ramaswamy, who's now supporting Trump, he said today that suspending her campaign would be the right thing for Nikki Haley to do for the country, for the United States. Do you agree with this?
Look, I think, as I said, I think it is inevitable that Donald Trump ends up our nominee, and the sooner we can turn to a general election where we can lay out that case between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, what 4 years of accomplishment under Donald Trump was like versus the 3 years that we've seen both domestically and internationally under President Biden. It's a very clear and easy case to make. I mean, she has a right to do it, but we're wasting time and money that could be focused on winning in November.
Looking at the Democrats, Joe Biden wasn't even on the primary ballot papers in New Hampshire. He attacks Trump for being undemocratic. He says this election is going to be about democracy. But then, Sean, what does it say that he was too scared to have his own name on the ballot paper?
It gets worse. They had the state of Florida literally canceled their primary. And then he and his team are trying to take Donald Trump off the ballot in the primary in several states, like in Colorado, Maine, not the general election yet. They're actually trying to keep him off the primary ballot. That's not democratic at all. And so to be lectured by these guys on democracy and democracy being under attack, when they're trying to inhibit people from actually casting a vote and being able to choose who they want, I think that's a real tell right there who's truly not supporting democracy.
Just finally, Sean, I know it's a long way off, but presuming Trump does win the Republican nomination, who do you think he would be looking at to be his VP? Do you think he'd be thinking about a woman, as seems to be the model these days?
You know, Sharri, that is a fantastic question. I have a podcast, The Sean Spicer Show, and I talked about it today. I've talked about it almost every day. I think that there are 4 people that I put on that list right now. Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota, Sarah Huckabee-Sanders, the current governor of Arkansas, my former deputy, Elise Stefanik, the congresswoman from New York, Marsha Blackburn, senator from Tennessee. There's a journalist named Mark Halperin. He really believes that Katie Britt, the new junior senator from Alabama, is going to be high on that list. I think all 5 of those would be people I'd keep my eye on. I think JD Vance, the senator from Ohio, is somebody that I would also keep my eye on. There's a few others. Ben Carson, who served as his HUD secretary, is somebody who's very high. Mike Pompeo, potentially, who served as State Department Secretary of State and CIA director. Those are what I see the short list. I think we're not big into identity politics on the right, but I do think that a woman would probably help soften him as he looks to get votes in key suburbs in places like Pennsylvania and Detroit, Atlanta.
Sean Spicer, always terrific to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Always a pleasure to be with you.